The silence came first. It was something no one expected, but everyone feared. Vega 9, one of the brightest stars in humanity's growing galaxy, had gone dark. For years, this colony had been a symbol of hope, a place where humans had started to build new lives far from Earth. It was a home for millions, a place filled with families, children playing under strange suns, and cities rising with proud towers. Yet now something terrible had happened, and the silence was the first sign of it. For those watching from Earth, the quiet was worse than any alarm. Space agencies had lost contact with Vega 9. No messages, no signals, not even a faint call for help. It was as if the colony had vanished into thin air. The leaders back on Earth grew anxious, their faces grim as they stared at the screens showing the last known coordinates of the colony. Deep inside the command center, a woman stood watching the empty screen. She was tall, with eyes that held both strength and sadness. Her name was never spoken in headlines, but to her this was personal. She had family there. A brother who had been the colony's governor, a man dedicated to keeping the people safe and the colony thriving. She reached for the console and tapped a few buttons. "Send the drones out," she said quietly but firmly. "We need to see what's happening." Minutes felt like hours as the fleet waited. The drones moved silently through space, their cameras capturing every inch of the destroyed colony. When the images returned, everyone in the room felt the weight of what they were seeing. Cities were gone. Where tall buildings and glowing streets had once stood, there was nothing but ash and blackened craters. Entire neighborhoods had been wiped off the map. Escape pods, normally filled with people desperate to survive, had been torn apart before they even left the launch bays. The colony's advanced security systems, usually protecting its people from threats, had melted like wax under a fierce heat. The room fell silent. No one had ever seen destruction on this scale before. Scientists rushed to analyze the data. Artificial intelligence programs ran through the ruins, searching for clues. The patterns didn't match anything Earth's armies or diplomats had encountered before. The attack was too precise, too fast. It was clear the colony had not been attacked by any known enemy. It was something new, something deadly. The woman stared at the screen again. This was no accident. This was no natural disaster. This was war. Her thoughts drifted to her brother. She remembered his last message, a video sent just days before the silence. He had spoken of hope, of progress, and of the dreams they all shared for the colony. Now those dreams lay buried under a mountain of dust. On Earth, news of the colony's destruction spread quickly. Families who had loved ones on Vega 9 gathered in public squares, crying, praying, and demanding answers. The fear of an unknown enemy turning its eyes to Earth grew with every passing hour. World leaders called for an emergency meeting. It was a moment unlike any other, a moment when all nations, old rivals, and new allies came together with one purpose: to find out who did this, and to make sure it never happened again. Inside the grand hall where the leaders met, the air was thick with tension. Voices rose and fell, some calling for calm, others for immediate action. But one thing was clear: humanity could not stand by while one of its own was destroyed. They decided to activate a plan that had long been kept secret. For years, Earth had prepared for the possibility of war on a scale never seen before. Hidden deep in military vaults, thousands of ships had been built and kept ready. These were no ordinary spaceships. They were battlefleets, 700,000 strong. Fleets so vast they could cover entire star systems. So powerful they could take on enemies no one had ever met before. Commanders were called to duty. Among them was the woman who had watched over Vega 9's final moments. She was given command of one of the largest fleets, a position that carried the hopes of millions on her shoulders. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. The enemy was unknown. The weapons would be deadly, and the cost of failure would be unimaginable. As the fleets prepared to leave Earth's orbit, she stood before her crew. Their faces were a mix of fear, determination, and hope. These were people who had left behind families, friends, and dreams to protect humanity's future. "We don't know what we are facing," she said, her voice steady but filled with feeling. "But we know what we are fighting for. Our homes, our families, and the future of all mankind. We will find those who destroyed Vega 9. We will make them pay, and we will make sure no other colony suffers the same fate." The ships roared to life, engines blazing bright against the dark backdrop of space. The battlefleets began their journey toward the unknown, carrying the weight of Earth's hope and vengeance. But even as they moved forward, questions remained. Who had attacked Vega 9? Why? And could Earth survive the war that was coming? Deep in the command center, the woman looked once more at the fading image of the colony. Her heart ached for the lives lost, but her resolve hardened. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. "We will not forget. We will not fail." The silence that had fallen over Vega 9 was about to be broken. The destruction of Vega 9 shook the world to its core. Across the cities of Earth, people watched the news with heavy hearts. Families who had loved ones on the distant colony waited for answers that didn't come. Questions filled every mind. Who did this? Why did they do it? Could it happen again? Leaders from every nation knew they had to act. For years, many had hoped that space would bring peace, not war. But the cruel silence from Vega 9 showed the truth. Out there, in the dark cold of space, there were dangers no one was prepared for. In the grand hall where Earth's leaders met, the mood was tense. Representatives stood around a massive table, their faces tired and worried. Some spoke with calm voices, asking for patience and diplomacy. They reminded everyone that rushing into war without knowing the enemy could be disastrous. But most voices called for action, for strength, and for vengeance. One of the leaders, an older person with a deep voice, stood and said, "We cannot let this destruction go unanswered. If we do nothing, more colonies will be destroyed, and Earth itself will become a target. We must show that humanity will not be broken." Another voice responded, "But rushing into battle without understanding the enemy could lead to more loss. We must seek peace first." The debate continued, but the majority agreed. The time for words was over. It was time for action. Earth had prepared for this day for a long time, though few people knew it. Deep underground, in secret shipyards and hidden bases, a massive fleet had been built. These were no ordinary ships. They were battlefleets designed to protect humanity from threats beyond Earth. 700,000 ships, more than anyone could imagine, were ready. These fleets were powerful, built with the best technology and the bravest crews. They were the last hope to stop the enemy who had destroyed Vega 9. The woman who had watched the colony's fall was called to lead one of the largest fleets. She stood tall, her heart heavy with grief but full of determination. Her mission was clear: find the enemy, fight them, and bring justice for the millions lost. Her crew was made of people from all walks of life. Some were young and full of hope, others were older and battle-hardened. They all carried a shared burden. They were humanity's shield against a threat no one fully understood. As the battle fleets prepared to launch, families gathered to say goodbye. Some cried, others hugged tightly, and many prayed for the safe return of their loved ones. The woman knew that many would not come back. War in space was deadly, and this fight was unlike any before. She walked through the halls of her flagship, meeting with officers and crew. Each face showed the same mix of fear and courage. She spoke to them simply, honestly. "We don't know who attacked Vega 9, she said, "but we know why we fight. We fight for our homes, for the people we love, and for every future generation. We must be strong." Her words lifted their spirits. They prepared their ships and weapons, ready to face the unknown. On Earth, scientists worked day and night to gather more information. They studied the wreckage, analyzed signals, and searched for any clues left behind. But the enemy remained a mystery. The only lead came from an unexpected source. A small group of survivors was found on a drifting space station near the destroyed colony. They were not human, but from a race called the Kalari, who had long been allies of humanity. One of the survivors, a scientist, was barely conscious when found. With great effort, the crew managed to get a message from them. The Kalari spoke of a terrifying force called the Nulliform, a species unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The Nulliform did not fight with weapons or armies. They were beings of energy and shadow, able to disrupt ships and systems without being seen. They could slip through space and time, making them almost impossible to fight. The scientist warned that the Nulliform had been moving quietly through the galaxy, destroying worlds and leaving nothing behind but silence. They were called the Annihilators in Kalari stories, creatures that consumed everything, leaving emptiness in their wake. The news was chilling. Earth's leaders realized they faced an enemy unlike any other, one that could threaten all life in the galaxy. The woman commanding the fleet listened to the report with a heavy heart. She knew this was no ordinary war. It was a fight for survival. The fleets moved out from Earth, spreading like a storm across the stars. Each ship carried weapons, shields, and crews ready to defend humanity's future. They moved carefully, searching for signs of the nulliform, but the enemy was elusive. Attacks came suddenly without warning. Ships disappeared in moments, swallowed by strange energy waves. Communication was lost with entire squadrons. Fear grew among the crews. Still, they pressed on. During one patrol, a small group of ships encountered a destroyed planet. Its surface cracked and lifeless. The crew saw strange patterns in the destruction, evidence that the nulliform had been there. It was clear their enemy was not just powerful but cruel. Despite the losses, the fleets learned. They adapted their tactics, developed new weapons, and improved their shields. The crews grew closer, united by their shared mission. On the flagship, the woman kept a steady hand. She worked long hours, planning battles and comforting her crew. She remembered the last message from her brother, full of hope and love, and carried it with her as a reminder of what they were fighting for. One night, as the fleet rested near a distant star, she looked up at the vastness of space. She thought of the millions who had lived and died on Vega 9, and of the countless others who might face the same fate. She knew the road ahead was dark and dangerous. But she also knew that humanity would not give up. They would fight. They would survive, and one day they would find a way to end the war. The silence from Vega 9 had been broken, not by peace, but by the roar of battlefleets rising for vengeance. The space around the battlefleets was vast and cold. For the people on board, every star and every shadow held questions. The enemy was still unknown. The silence of Vega 9 had been broken, but the truth was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. As the fleets moved through deep space, they found signs of destruction everywhere. Planets once full of life were now dead and silent. Moons had been stripped bare, their surfaces scorched and cracked. The strange enemy had left a path of ruin, but no one knew why or how. The woman leading the fleet spent long hours studying every report. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was sharp. She knew the importance of every decision. Each step forward could mean life or death for her crew, and for humanity. During a routine scan, one of the smaller ships found something strange floating near a broken space station. Inside, they discovered a survivor, a member of the Kalari, the alien race who had helped humanity build colonies. The survivor was weak and confused, but when they spoke, their words sent chills through everyone. They spoke of the nulliform, the shadow species that had attacked Vega 9. These creatures were unlike anything anyone had faced before. They were not made of flesh or metal, but seemed to be made of dark energy and information. They did not use weapons or armies like humans or the Kalari. Instead, they moved through space and time, slipping past defenses and attacking without warning. The nulliform could corrupt machines, shut down communication, and even affect the minds of those who came too close. It was like fighting ghosts in the dark. The woman listened carefully. She could see the fear in the eyes of the crew who heard the report. This was a new kind of war, one that could not be fought with guns alone. She called her officers to a meeting. "This enemy is different," she said. "We cannot fight them the way we fight others. We must think differently, act quickly, and stay united." The crews trained harder. They studied new tactics and prepared for attacks they could not always see coming. Fear was present, but so was hope. The people on these ships knew what was at stake. Their homes, their families, and the future of their kind depended on their courage. One day, the fleet came under attack. It started suddenly. A group of ships was patrolling near a star system when waves of dark energy struck them. Ships vanished in moments, swallowed by strange storms of shadow and light. The woman watched from her command bridge as alarms blared and screens flickered. She ordered her fleet to form defensive patterns to stay close and protect each other. But the nulliform were fast and unpredictable. The fleet lost many ships that day. After the battle, the surviving crews gathered to mourn. The loss was heavy. Messages were sent back to Earth, and families grieved for those who did not return. The woman felt the weight of command more than ever. She spent quiet moments alone, thinking of her brother and all the people lost on Vega 9. She knew she had to stay strong for the sake of everyone who still fought. Scientists on the fleet worked with Kalari researchers to understand more about the nulliform. They found that these creatures existed in a kind of subspace, a layer beneath normal space that humans had only recently begun to explore. This gave the fleets hope. If the nulliform used this hidden space to move and attack, maybe it was possible to find a way to block them or disrupt their connection. The woman ordered more reconnaissance missions into subspace. Small scout ships equipped with new sensors ventured into dangerous areas searching for clues. These missions were risky. Some ships never returned. Others sent back strange messages, reports of eerie silence, strange noises, and glimpses of dark shapes that vanished when approached. The people on board lived in constant tension. Sleep was hard to find, and every shadow seemed to hold danger. Yet through it all, friendships formed. Crews shared stories from home, memories of better days and hopes for peace. One night, the woman stood outside on the deck of her flagship, looking up at the stars. She thought of the millions lost and the millions still waiting for news back on Earth. She felt a deep sadness, but also a fierce determination. "We will find them," she whispered to herself. "We will stop this nightmare." The fleets continued to move forward, searching for the enemy in the endless darkness. Every new discovery brought more questions. Every loss deepened the resolve. The war against the nulliform was just beginning, and humanity was ready to fight. The fleets had been searching for months now. The silence that had fallen over Vega 9 was no longer just a sad memory. It was a warning. The enemy was closer than anyone had dared to imagine. The place where the nulliform had entered the galaxy was near a place called the Epsilon Gate, a powerful wormhole that connected distant parts of space. If they could control this gate, they could spread their destruction even faster. The woman leading the fleet knew this. She understood that the battle at Epsilon Gate would be the most important fight of all. It would decide the fate of many worlds, including Earth. As the fleets approached the gate, they saw the signs of battle already left behind. Ships had been destroyed, their remains floating like broken toys in space. The empty shells of once proud vessels drifted silently in the cold darkness. The tension on every ship grew heavy. Everyone knew that the enemy was waiting. The woman gathered her officers. "We must be ready," she said. "This battle will not be easy. The nulliform will fight without mercy, but we have no choice. If we lose the gate, we lose everything." The fleets moved into position, forming a huge circle around the gate. The ships were close together, shields glowing softly in the dark. The commanders spoke in low voices, sharing last-minute plans. Crews checked their weapons and systems. The fear was there, but so was courage. When the nulliform attacked, it was like nothing anyone had seen before. Suddenly, waves of dark energy crashed into the fleet, striking ships with strange pulses that shut down engines and weapons. Ships blinked out of existence one by one, swallowed by invisible forces. The nulliform didn't fight like humans or the Kalari. They seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once, attacking from shadows and slipping through cracks in space. The woman stood on the bridge of her flagship, heart pounding. She ordered counterattacks, directing the fleet to fire at points where the nulliform energy pulses seemed strongest. The ships fought back with everything they had: lasers, missiles, energy shields. But many ships were lost. One of the largest battleships was hit hard and began to break apart. The crew sent out distress signals and rescue teams moved quickly to save survivors. But in the chaos, more ships were swallowed by the darkness. The woman's voice was calm but firm. "Hold the line. Protect the gate at all costs." The battle lasted for hours, a constant storm of light and shadow. The space around Epsilon Gate was filled with flashes of energy and the sounds of alarms. Crews worked tirelessly, repairing systems, helping injured friends, and fighting off attacks. At one point, the flagship was hit by a massive pulse. The lights flickered and systems began to fail. The woman held onto the command rail as the ship shook violently. She could hear the panic in the voices around her, but she refused to give in. "Keep fighting," she shouted. "We are the shield for all humanity." The fleet pushed back slowly but surely. Using new tactics, they managed to trap some of the nulliform energy in special nets of charged particles. This slowed the enemy's advance and gave the fleets a chance to regroup. The price was high. Thousands of ships were destroyed. Thousands of lives were lost. But the gate remained in human hands. After the battle, the surviving crews gathered to mourn. The woman walked among them, offering words of comfort and strength. She remembered the faces of those lost and thought of the families waiting for news on Earth. In the quiet moments, she allowed herself to feel the weight of the loss. But she also remembered why they fought: to protect the future, to stop the darkness from spreading. Scientists aboard the fleet worked quickly to understand the strange powers of the nulliform. They discovered that the enemy could interfere with artificial intelligence systems, causing machines to act strangely or even betray their human crews. This was a terrifying discovery. Many ships relied on AI to operate their weapons and shields. If the nulliform could control or confuse these systems, it made the enemy even more dangerous. The woman ordered changes to how the fleets operated. Crews had to rely more on their own skills and less on machines. Training increased and officers learned to trust their instincts as much as their technology. In one quiet moment, the woman received a message from Earth. It was a recording from her brother sent before Vega 9 was destroyed. His voice was calm and hopeful. "Remember why we fight," he said. "For the people we love. For the worlds we call home. No matter what comes, we must never lose hope." She played the message again and again. It was a light in the dark, a reminder of what was at stake. The fleets remained near Epsilon Gate, watching and waiting. They knew the nulliform might return at any time. The woman spent her days planning and preparing, but also talking to her crews. She listened to their fears and hopes, sharing stories of home and the life they were fighting to protect. One night, as she looked out into space, she saw a flicker of light far beyond the gate. It was small, but it gave her hope. Maybe it was a sign that the fight was not over, that there was still a chance to win. The battle at Epsilon Gate was a turning point. It showed the courage and strength of humanity, but also the terrible power of the enemy. The woman knew the war would be long and hard. But she also knew that as long as people stood together, there was hope. She whispered to herself, "We will keep fighting, for every lost world, for every life." And somewhere in the dark, the Battlefleets waited, for the next wave, for the next chance to protect everything they held dear. The battle at Epsilon Gate was over, but the war was far from finished. The fleets were battered, the crews tired, and the losses heavy. Yet there was a new sense of determination growing stronger with every passing day. The woman leading the fleet knew that this enemy, the nulliform, was unlike any threat humanity had ever faced. But she also knew that giving up was never an option. Life aboard the ship settled into a tense rhythm. The crews repaired their vessels, trained harder, and prepared for what was sure to come next. The silence in space was no longer peaceful. It was filled with a quiet anticipation, as if the dark was waiting to strike again. In the mess halls and corridors, conversations were different now. People shared stories about lost friends, about the families they left behind, and about why they kept fighting. They talked about hope, even when it seemed like everything around them was falling apart. The woman spent many hours with her officers, planning their next moves. She knew that attacking the nulliform directly was almost impossible. Their ability to slip through space and disrupt technology made a traditional battle dangerous and uncertain. Instead, they needed a new plan, one that was smarter and more patient. The scientists aboard the fleet worked day and night to study the enemy's strange powers. They discovered that the nulliform relied on something called the shadow web, a hidden network in space that allowed them to move quickly and communicate without being detected. If the fleets could find a way to break this web, they might be able to stop the nulliform's movements and slow their attacks. The woman approved the plan. It was risky and complicated, but it was the best chance they had. Small teams of ships were sent into deep space, far beyond the normal patrol routes. Their mission was to find and destroy the nodes of the shadow web, key points where the nulliform connected and moved. The missions were dangerous. Crews had to fly through areas filled with strange energy storms and invisible traps. Many ships returned damaged and some did not return at all, but the effort paid off. The fleets found parts of the shadow web and began to cut it apart. Each destroyed node weakened the nulliform's power and slowed their attacks. As this new war unfolded, the woman noticed something else. Her crew was changing. The fear that had once filled their eyes was slowly being replaced by a quiet confidence. They were no longer just surviving. They were fighting back. She spent time with the young crew members, listening to their stories and hopes. She reminded them why they were there, not just to fight, but to protect the people they loved and the worlds they called home. One evening, as the fleet rested near a small star, the woman received a message from Earth. It was a message for all the fleets, from the leaders and the families watching from afar. The message was simple but powerful. "We are proud of you. We believe in you. You carry the future of humanity with you. Come home safe. The woman shared the message with her crew. The words brought tears to many eyes. For a moment, the war seemed a little less heavy, but the Nulliform were not finished. Their attacks grew more frequent and more violent. They began targeting supply ships, cutting off fuel and food needed by the fleets. The woman knew that if the supply lines failed, the fleets could not continue to fight. She ordered patrols to protect the supply routes and sent out rescue missions to save any crews caught in attacks. One rescue mission was especially difficult. A small convoy had been ambushed near a dead star. The ships were trapped in a swirling storm of dark energy. The woman personally led the rescue effort, coordinating ships to break through the enemy's grip. It was a fierce fight. The Nulliform used every trick they had, striking from shadows and disrupting weapons. But the fleets worked together, protecting each other and pushing through. In the end, most of the convoy was saved, though several ships were lost. The woman felt relief but knew the cost was high. After the rescue, she gathered her crew. "Every life we save is a victory," she said. "We may be far from home, but we are not alone. Together we are strong." As time went on, the fleets grew smarter and stronger. The scientists made progress in understanding the Nulliform's weaknesses, and the crews learned to fight with both courage and patience. The woman often thought about the people waiting back on Earth and in the colonies. She knew they were watching, hoping, and praying for peace. One night, as she looked out at the endless stars, she whispered, "We will keep fighting, for them, for us, for all of humanity." The war was far from over, but the battlefleets were ready. They carried with them the spirit of a people who refused to be defeated. And somewhere, deep in the dark reaches of space, the Nulliform waited for the next move. But this time, humanity was ready. The war against the Nulliform had stretched on for months, testing the limits of every person aboard the fleets. The woman leading the battlefleets knew that the time had come for a final push. The enemy had been weakened, but they were still dangerous. This was the moment that could decide the future of humanity. The fleets gathered near a vast nebula, a swirling cloud of gas and dust that hid secrets within its glowing colors. Intelligence reports suggested that the Nulliform's main base was hidden somewhere inside this nebula. If the fleets could find it and destroy it, the enemy might be stopped once and for all. Preparation for this mission was unlike anything before. Every ship was repaired and upgraded. Crews trained endlessly. Plans were made and tested over and over. The woman spoke to her crews. "This is the most important mission we will ever face. We do this not just for ourselves, but for every person on Earth and in the colonies. We carry their hopes with us. We fight to end the darkness." The fleets moved cautiously into the nebula. The swirling gases made sensors unreliable, and strange energy readings made navigation difficult. It was like flying through a dream or a nightmare. Every step was dangerous. The Nulliform had traps and ambushes waiting in the shadows. Ships were attacked by waves of dark energy that could disable systems and confuse minds. But the fleets pushed forward. They moved as one, protecting each other and advancing carefully. During the journey, the woman spent time with the crews, walking through the corridors, listening to their fears and hopes. She knew the weight they carried, the fear of dying far from home, the worry for families waiting for news, and the deep desire to survive and protect. One young crew member asked her, "Do you think we can win?" She looked at the stars shining faintly through the ship's windows and said, "We must believe we can. Belief is the first step to victory." Finally, after days of careful movement, the fleets found the heart of the nebula. There, hidden among the glowing clouds, was a structure unlike anything seen before. It was huge, dark and shimmering like a living shadow, the Nulliform's base. The woman's voice was steady as she gave the order to attack. The fleets launched their weapons, and the space around the base lit up with fire and energy. The Nulliform fought back fiercely. Shadows twisted and shifted, striking ships with deadly precision. The base sent out waves of energy that scrambled the fleet's sensors and communications. The battle was chaotic and terrifying. Ships were lost, alarms blared, and the crews fought with every ounce of courage they had. The woman directed the fight from her flagship, her mind sharp and focused. She gave orders to protect weaker ships, to concentrate fire on key points, and to keep pushing forward. In the thick of the battle, she realized that the Nulliform base was connected to the shadow web they had been cutting apart for months. Destroying it could break the enemy's power completely. With that knowledge, She ordered a small team of the bravest pilots to fly close to the base and plant special charges designed to collapse the structure. The pilots knew the risk. Many might not return, but they accepted their mission, flying into the heart of darkness. The woman watched as the pilots disappeared into the swirling shadows. Moments later, explosions rocked the base. The dark structure began to break apart, fragments flying off into space. With the base collapsing, the nulliform's power started to fade. Their attacks slowed and became weaker. The fleets pressed the advantage, pushing the enemy back into the shadows. When the battle finally ended, silence returned to space. The nebula glowed softly, peaceful once more. The woman gathered the surviving crews. Her voice was tired but full of hope. "We have won a great victory today. But the war is not over. We must remain vigilant. We must protect what we have fought so hard to save." Messages were sent back to Earth where people celebrated the news. The destruction of the nulliform base was a symbol of hope, a sign that humanity could survive and thrive. The woman thought of her brother's words, of the families waiting for peace and of the countless lives lost. She knew that the price of victory had been high, but she also knew that the future was brighter. The fleets returned to Earth, greeted by cheers and tears. People who had lived in fear now looked forward to a new beginning. The woman stood among her crew, proud but humble. "This victory belongs to all of us," she said. "To the brave souls who fought, to those who waited, and to the generations who will come after us." As peace returned, the woman looked up at the stars, remembering the long journey, the battles, the losses, and the hope that never died. She whispered softly, "We survived. We will continue to survive, and we will never forget."